Hey everybody, welcome back to another Sidequest episode of the Zamora 2-Player Podcast. I am joined today by Susiegrace. She's a content creator and variety streamer that I stumbled into I think it was YouTube I found first of yours, and then I stumbled into your Twitch and Discord after that. But Susie, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I'm usually on your end.
Right.
So
yeah, we're going to talk about
happy,
that.
yeah, I'm happy to be in the other chair.
Yeah, you get to relax this time.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. So Susie, you have a series called Game Spark, where you interview people from your life, from your community, your gaming community, Discord community. And I've heard, and it's all about talking about your love of gaming and games that are special to you. And I've heard you talk about a spark bird, which I think is part of where you got the name for that show. And that's a term in bird watching. Can you kind of can you explain a little bit of what that is? Because I had no idea until I heard you talk about it.
Yes. So I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to This American Life, and they had an episode about bird watching, and the episode was called Spark Bird. And so it talked about how a spark bird is basically the first bird that really gets you into bird watching.
Right.
And it just sparks that interest for you. And I'd never heard that term before either. But when I came up with the idea for GameSpark, it just made sense in my head. Like, well, what are people's Spark games? I didn't feel like Spark Game made a very good title.
GameSpark.
So
you did the right thing flipping it, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad, because it didn't sit very well with me to call it a Spark game, but or to call it Spark game, but that was ultimately the goal, was just kind of talking to people about like their gaming history or their whatever got them started or whatever.
Yeah.
And to be totally honest, I'm not entirely sure what my Spark game is, but
Sure.
everybody seems to be able to come up with at least one.
Yeah.
Most of the time they can remember what it is. So that's where the term comes from.
Yeah.
I'd never heard Sparkbird either, but
as soon as you like described it, I was like, oh yeah, like that's literally what my brother and I talked about for the first 2 or 3 episodes of this podcast last year.
Yeah.
When we started it up. So it's like, oh yeah, I immediately understand what this is, and now I'm going to watch all of them. So yeah, it was really fun going through those and just seeing, I love, and my brother and I have talked about this at length, but like, I just love what video games are to people. Like, it's not just, some people it's just something to waste their time or unwind or whatever. But like, I love the stories of like when a game just completely changed your outlook on, something, or the way you feel about certain things, or like
makes you cry.
I am the biggest crier at video games. So we'll talk about that a little later when we talk about Zelda, but because that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Yes, we'll get there.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to watch more of your stuff. It's like, oh, she gets it. She cries. She understands what games can be.
Oh man, they're just a different medium. I mean, you're still when you're looking at media and when you're looking at a story, it doesn't matter whether it's a puppet show or it's a book or it's a movie or a video game or whatever. A story is a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how you get that idea across. Apparently it matters to some people, because some people gatekeep stories, I guess. Yeah. And they say, oh, well, a video game's not really that, or a puppet show isn't really that, or whatever. But the reality is they're all just stories.
Yep.
And if anything, I feel like video games are more emotionally investing, or like you emotionally invest more. Did I say that right? Okay, edit that out. No, if anything,
no,
I feel like
it's all raw. We're keeping all of this.
If anything, I feel like you become more emotionally invested because you are the one that is making the decision. You are the one that is landing that last blow.
Yeah.
You're the one that's deciding to either go off and cook a bunch of stuff like my daughter does in Breath of the Wild, or like me, like go off and actually do things that matter, you know? And that really adds to the emotional depth of these video game stories, because you become so attached with you become so attached to your protagonist. You are the protagonist.
Yeah.
And in books and movies, it's kind of different. I mean, I guess in books you kind of feel that way. Like when I read Harry Potter, I feel like I'm Harry.
Sure.
And I think, yeah, I would absolutely do that. Of course I would, but I don't know, I don't know. But in video games, do you have to?
Right.
Especially these days with video games that are so open-ended, you can do whatever. You can choose wherever you want to go, or they make you choose your ending, which stresses me out.
Yeah. Let me
'Cause I
just
feel like I'm
Google
gonna
this
make
first. Like, what's the good
Yes.
ending? Okay, perfect.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, too many endings. Some games have like 7
Yeah.
endings and stresses me out. I want to do it right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I totally get it. I get the emotional impact that video games have, and
For
I've
sure.
experienced that all my life. So
Yeah,
Oh.
I mean, my brother and I, it's impacted obviously in a huge way to the point that we can sit down and talk for hours and hours and hours about the way they've affected us. And it's like I'm the kind of person now where it's like my vacations are big game releases. Like when Rebirth came out earlier this year, I was like, okay, I'm taking a week off for that. And then Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trails next week, I'm taking that week off, and those are my
Yeah.
vacations for the year. That's all I need for my
I
for my
remember
time
when
off.
Tears of the Kingdom was released, and I found out people were actually taking work off.
Yep,
Now, I'm a stay-at-home mom of 2 little kids,
for
so
sure.
I don't get to just take work off.
No.
And I remember being so jealous of these
Yep.
people and being like, I wish I could take a whole day to just sit, hole up in my room with a Dr. Pepper, endless supply of Dr. Pepper and my Switch. Are you kidding? That sounds like
Yep.
heaven. But I couldn't do that. So
Yeah.
I just had to make do with what I could.
I mean, being a mom is slightly more important, so we'll give
It is.
we won't revoke your gamer card. Don't worry about
No,
it.
it is. It's so important, and I get that. But like, all I wanted for Mother's Day was to be left alone in my room
Sure.
with my Switch, so I
Yeah.
could play. And that was the one day I got it. So
Perfect.
that was
You made it count. Yeah.
yeah, I did.
So one thing I really like about kind of the origins of your GameSpark idea is I really like how you kind of built up the concept that was kind of somewhat driven by like a negative comment online for one of your Tears of the Kingdom videos.
Dude, it was a hate comment, man.
Yeah, I'm being generous calling it
yeah,
negative.
that's generous. It was so mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in light of that, or I guess because of that, can you talk to me a little bit about sort of the importance of transforming something negative into something positive in this online space, which can really often just be widespread with toxicity?
Man, you know what? I am just a firm believer that I mean, all my life I've been a relatively positive person.
Sure.
I'm that person that's usually in a good mood. I can usually find a silver lining. I can usually kind of rise above. It's not always easy by any
No.
means, but I've just always kind of been a more positive person. I tend to find the good in things rather than finding the bad in things because finding the bad in things usually just makes me feel super crappy, and I don't want to feel super crappy.
Sure.
I definitely have my bad days for sure.
Yeah.
But when I was faced with probably one of the meanest comments I've ever had on any content I've created online ever,
Sure.
it was definitely a hit. And I remember thinking, first of all, I just remember thinking, I just don't understand how anybody feels the need to make comments like that. I
I
just
know.
don't get it.
Yep.
But like, you don't know me and I don't know you. So why are you making this nasty comment saying that I'm a waste of space for crying over a video game? Why would you do that? But ultimately, I really believe it's a choice. I really believe that we all as just human beings have the choice of how we're going to react to certain things.
Hmm.
And most of the time, if not all the time, it is better to choose to rise above than choose to be bitter and angry. And it's not easy sometimes. Like
No.
that comment hurt,
Yep.
but in a I don't know, on the internet, I just feel like first of all, I guess on the internet you can ignore people because I didn't respond to that comment. I didn't say anything. Although I've thought about going back now that it's been a little over, like it's almost been a year, I think, since I
Sure.
made that video post or whatever. I've thought about going back and replying to that comment now and being like, I just want to thank you for that comment because it it drove me to start a podcast and it's great and I'm having a
Sure.
great time. But I also don't want to like be petty either. So,
Yeah.
it's whatever. But I don't know, how do you do that in a toxic, like, internet setting? I don't know, I think you just really have to you kind of have to make the decision for yourself, and you have to realize that you can't change how anybody else is going to act, but you can choose how you react.
Yep.
And once you teach yourself that it's always a choice, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Now, that's not to say that it's crazy, crazy easy to do that, because there are definitely times where I wanted to throttle somebody through the screen or whatever because they said something really mean.
Yeah.
But I just believe it's a choice, man. I just believe that most people today, I think, allow themselves to fall into this kind of like bitter, kind of angry. They get offended really easily, and they get angry when other people disagree with them or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, just let it go, man. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to arguing with somebody online does not help.
No. There's
So
no universe where that becomes a
no,
positive, outcome.
no.
It just absolutely will do no good at all.
And to be totally honest, my husband says one of the best things you can ever tell anybody is you can't do that. Because it'll either do one of two things. They'll either be like, "Oh, you're right, I can't do this. He told me I can't do it. I can't do this." Or it makes you go, "What? I'm going to prove you wrong. I
Yeah.
can do this." And
Sure.
so it's not that this guy was saying I couldn't do things. He was basically just saying that
Why are you
I was
doing
being
this?
stupid because I was crying over a video game.
Yeah.
But it's that same mentality of being like, I can either build on this or I can let it totally affect me and just drag me down into the mud. And
Yeah.
and really, why would you let some strange person who doesn't even know who you are or know anything you stand for, why would you let them define you as a person? Like,
Yeah.
you don't know this person. And the fact that they made that post just means they're a child. I
Yeah.
mean, like, the
At
fact that they
least
felt the
mentally,
need.
for sure,
Yeah,
still a
at least
child.
mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows how old that person was,
Yeah.
like, who knows? But ultimately, I'm like, and now you've just proven that you are super immature and super childish, because why else would you post a comment like that?
Yeah.
So, I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's no benefit at all. And one thing I will say that that you've done that I think helps sort of combat this is I really believe that like a person's sort of like online community, be it Discord or Twitch or whatever, is genuinely a reflection of like the person, like the creator's output. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I feel like you really have such a positive space in like your Twitch streams and everything. Like I've told you this many times that I'm usually lurking. I'm not always actively chatting, but I lurk a lot. And your streams are always just super cozy, like very positive, and just and I really think that helps create sort of like a bubble of just like that helps keep some of the like the anyone that comes in that's like toxic. It's like the like white blood cells. It's like no, like get out. We don't do that here, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I
we
do
don't
think
talk
it's a
about that.
yeah,
Susie doesn't talk like that or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
I've watched the same thing, and I love my community for it because, once again, I'm just a believer that A, it's a choice, and I just think the world needs more
Yep.
positivity. And a lot of online communities can become really, really toxic. And
Yes.
I just don't listen. Like, there are bad enough things happening in the world.
Yeah. We don't
I
need to
don't
argue
need,
about someone crying at a video game.
no, I don't
That
need,
is
I do not need people to come in and tell me that I'm a crappy player, or that I did this wrong, or that I'm not taking the right path, or
right.
that I don't know, that I shouldn't cry or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, don't allow yourself, you should know your worth and know that you are worth so much more than having crappy people come into your chat and try to like say crappy things or like not follow your rules. Or, I mean, that's my channel. Like, if you don't agree with the way I do things, then that's fine, but don't come in and like, so I try to keep it as positive as I can. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable or like they don't belong or whatever, but there are guidelines. And if you're going to
For sure.
not follow the guidelines, then you can go find somewhere else, because I don't have space.
Nope.
You just got to cut that toxicity out,
Yeah.
Just
Well,
just cut.
I do think it's a really good reflection of you and the community you built, that you have that really like net positive kind of community where the any negativity that comes in like sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's definitely a reflection on you and the way you run kind of
Well, thank you.
your content. So
I
that's great.
appreciate that. That's what
Uh,
I'm going for. That's what I tell
sure,
people all the time. Like the
sure,
whole reason, I mean, streaming is my self-care. Like I said, I'm a
yeah,
stay-at-home mom to 2 little kids, so I get burned out a
yep,
lot and very quickly. And so streaming is my self-care because I play games and I love people, and so it's a way to kind of combine those two things. And it's not like if somebody comes in and says something negative, we're like, "Get out!" Like
no,
that's
yeah,
not
no,
how we
no, no,
are.
no,
But we're like, "Hey, man, like maybe you should watch what you say, or maybe you should, like,
yep,
oh, well, Susie's not really for that, or whatever." I mean, we don't like. I'm always willing to give somebody a chance or
for
two,
sure,
but
yeah,
once it
yeah.
comes, once it
I'm
comes
being
down to it, we're just
hyperbolic when I say they ever get pushed out, but yeah,
yeah,
the
white
sentiment
blood
is there.
cells,
Yeah,
get out. No,
yeah.
no. It depends though, because there
If
are
they're real
times,
nasty, yeah,
yeah,
it'll probably happen.
yeah. But you know
Um,
what? To be totally honest, I use the family friendly tag on my stream, and that
sure,
does a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I
sure,
rarely ever get people that come in that are just like "Rah, rah, rah, rah," keyboard mashing
right,
hate or anything like that. So that's but that's my own personal choice. That's
yeah.
because that's just who I am and that's what I stand for. So I
Um,
don't know. Not everybody uses that.
no, that's a good point though. One of the previous guests I had on, they refer to it as parallel play when you're just streaming, and because it's like to me, it's the digital equivalent of like sitting with my friend on the couch watching them play a game. And that's
Yes.
what Twitch is for me. And that's why I'm not always constantly chatting. It's like, oh, I just like that
Yeah.
sort of community of like, okay, I'm going to sit and watch my friend play this game while I play my game or whatever. And
Mhm.
she used the term parallel play. And I've really come to use that a lot. I like that. I like that
I
way of
like that a
describing it.
lot. Yeah, I like
Especially if
that a lot.
I'm playing something, but I want to watch you play something over there.
Or
It's like
just
we're
kind
kind of
of
enjoying.
have like a community, or just have kind of something, because I have some of my best memories of gaming was sitting on the couch with my older brother and my
Yeah.
younger sister after school
Yep.
and just playing games. And granted, we weren't playing together, and
Nope.
it wasn't like we were on Game Boys and my brother was on the Super Nintendo or whatever. Like one of us was playing a game and then the others were just kind of sitting around. And that is absolutely what it feels like when
Yep.
I'm streaming and I have this community and stuff. Like it's that
It's just
same
that your
feeling where we're
couch
kind of
can hold
all,
dozens
yeah.
and dozens of people.
No, it cannot. I wish it could, but it cannot. It is my virtual couch,
Yeah.
which is great. And
Yeah.
I love that. So
So in doing your GameSpark interviews, what is one of the more unexpected things you've learned while conducting those? Whether it's just a game you wouldn't expect to affect someone in a certain way, or just anything unexpected that comes to mind.
Um, okay, I would say two things. The first is how many people are so into Pokemon. Now,
Okay.
I say that because that was a surprise to me because I missed the Pokemon bandwagon,
Sure.
and I have nothing against Pokemon. I think Pokemon is awesome. I have a 9-year-old daughter who loves Pokemon, and
Yeah.
I have plenty of friends that are into it. My sister's into it. My brother missed that bandwagon too. He's older than me. But it just I don't know why, but it surprised me how many people I've talked to that have either said that it was their Spark game or mentioned Pokemon in some form. I mean, to give you an idea of how uneducated I am in Pokemon,
Sure.
the first person that I interviewed was a member of my community, and he was talking about like red, yellow, gold, and I didn't realize he was talking about games. I thought he was talking about
Oh, I
like
remember that. I think I remember
yeah, I
that.
remember he was talking. I thought he was talking about like Pokemon colors or something, and I was like, wait a minute, are these games? And he was like, well, yeah, there's Pokemon Yellow, and I had no idea. So
I
there's
remember that
that.
one.
Yeah, so Pokemon is a surprise, but what's funny is it shouldn't be, because like I know Pokemon is huge. It's still huge,
Yeah.
but I just didn't expect
Oh,
it.
you
And
just
then
missed it, like you said, right? Like it just
yeah, I just
went
missed
right
that
under your
bandwagon.
radar.
And I don't really know why, because I had a Game Boy, but it was never in our house. Like we just never. My brother had the consoles,
Yeah.
and then he's the one who got the consoles for Christmas every year
Yeah.
or every so often. And I just played off of whatever he had. I was
Yeah.
just at the mercy of what my brother had.
Of the
And then
hand-me-downs.
yes, and then my sister, I think, got a GameCube for Christmas one year, but like I never ever got a, you know what? Lies. I did get a Game Boy Color. I don't remember when I got that, but like, how did I miss Pokemon? I don't know. I have no
Well,
idea.
back then too, it's like you know, you don't just have the internet to receive all this game info all the time from every
No.
source, right? So
Yeah.
if it wasn't in a magazine you're reading, you wouldn't even know it existed until it's like
Yeah,
a couple
and
of
you
years
know what?
old or whatever.
That's actually a good point because I had all my gaming knowledge from my older brother. And
Yeah.
since my older brother wasn't interested in Pokemon, I never ever ever knew about it
Yeah.
until years later when all of a sudden I like was going to school with these kids that were talking obsessively about it and I was like, "What the heck is this? I don't know what this is." I had no idea. Oh, and then my sister was watching the cartoon and I was
Yeah.
like, "What?" I was so confused. So Pokemon was one, and I'm sure
Cool.
I'll still interview plenty of people that Pokemon like changed their lives or whatever. And like I said, I have nothing against
Yeah, yeah.
Pokemon. Great. I love
Just
all games.
unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of was unexpected, which it shouldn't have been, but it was. Number two is probably I have the question, have any games made you cry?
Yeah.
And in my head, when I was writing that question, it was, have any games made you cry? Like I sobbed at the end of Tears of the Kingdom, or
Yep.
like when I got all the dragon tears, or at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, like when the title card played and I
Yeah,
started
same.
crying. Yep. So that's what was in my head. But then I've interviewed multiple people that were like, well, nothing's ever made me cry like emotionally like that, but I have shed tears of anger
Sure.
over like losing saved data or like
Oh,
my brother
sure.
walking, yeah, or my brother walking in front of the thing and ripping a controller out right at the wrong moment and I hadn't saved in a while or something like that. Or I've also had people say I've cried there was one interview I did where he said I've cried tears from laughing so hard.
Sure.
Like me and my siblings or me and my friends play this game and it's hysterical. And I just never considered that you can cry like hello, you can cry for so many different reasons.
Right.
But in my
Yeah.
head it was like, oh, have any games ever made you cry, like made you sad and just touched you? But these interviews are opening my eyes to see that you can cry for so many different reasons with video games. And
Yeah.
I've been in all those situations because I've also laughed till I've cried with my
Yeah.
siblings playing games like Towerfall, which I think is the best multiplayer ever.
Sure.
It's so great. Or like losing save data or having it be unplugged in the middle of a boss fight or something. Like I've also experienced that.
Yeah.
So I leave that question open-ended. I didn't change it. I didn't go back and say, okay, well, have any games made you cry emotionally? Like
From being
because of the
sad or
story.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did you cry because you were sad? I just leave
Right.
it and then they interpret it however they want
Yeah.
and
I like
we
that.
go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good answers.
Those would be my two probably.
Yeah. I like that. So one thing you and I both share is definitely our love for the Zelda series. It's definitely that. So for me and my brother, it's like Zelda and Final Fantasy are like those I describe. Those are the 2 days that I take time off work for.
Zelda
when a
and
new
Final
one comes out.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Those are good. Those are good
Um,
ones.
so that being said, can you just tell me a little bit about your history with it and when it really hooked you? At what point?
Oh, this is like my own GameSpark interview. Okay. So I I think the earliest Zelda memories I have
Mhm.
are I remember watching my dad and my brother play the original Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo.
Okay.
And the only thing I really remember is the music to the dungeons.
Sure.
Um and I remember like tiny little bits and pieces of the dungeons. But I really remember watching my brother and my dad play Link to the Past, and I
Hmm.
remember seeing that big like hole in the top of the pyramid in the Dark World at the very, very end when you're
Yep.
supposed to go in and fight Ganon. And I just remember watching my dad come back to that point over and over and over again because he kept dying. And so
Oh
he was
yeah, that's where you'd
obviously
like save and quit. You'd start there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's I remember that. And then I think I tried Link to the Past a little bit when I was younger because I was too old. Like I played a few games on the Nintendo system, like the original Nintendo.
Hmm.
But by the time I was kind of old enough to play games, it was kind of like you got the blinking black and blue screen, and we were blowing in the cartridges, and it wasn't working because it
Had
didn't
all
work.
the techniques that didn't actually do anything.
Yeah, and they didn't actually do anything. So I played a couple games on the Nintendo, but I mostly played games on the Super Nintendo. So I tried Link to the Past, and it was too hard for me. I was confused in the dungeons and whatnot. So I think the first Zelda game I ever played all the way through was probably Ocarina of Time.
Sure.
On N64.
Yeah.
And that totally blew my mind. I just thought it was incredible. I loved the storyline. I loved the fighting. I was how old was I? I don't even remember how old I was, but I thought Link was really cute when he got older, like 7 years older. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, he has an earring, and like, oh, he's so cute. And these 3D like polygon
He
graphics.
somehow magically got that earring when he was frozen in
surprise.
time. Whatever, don't worry about it.
We just were like, hey, let's do this. Yeah, so I remember just being struck, I think, just by like the music and the atmosphere. And I just loved it. And then after that, I think I probably played Ocarina of Time. I mean, that was kind of all we had was that and Link to the Past. And so I just played Ocarina of Time over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so, I mean, I've played Zelda pretty much since I can really remember.
Sure.
And each Zelda game, I've played almost all of them. I will say, as much as I love Breath of the Wild and as much as I love Tears of the Kingdom, I don't consider either of them my favorite Zelda game.
Sure.
I would say my favorite Zelda is probably Twilight Princess. And to be totally honest, I can't even tell you why. Because Tears of the Kingdom is such a phenomenal game. And Breath of the Wild was such a mind-blowing experience. It was my first open world exploration game ever.
Wow.
So I was
Start with the best.
Yeah, well, it was like a baptism by fire. It was crazy. And I could not, and I played it before my siblings, and I remember just frantically texting them and being like, you guys do not understand. You don't understand. So like Twilight Princess is interesting because it's your same linear formulaic. I mean, Nintendo's very formulaic with that stuff, but something about it, I think as it was a darker one. Oh, and I should add that the setting's great. The atmosphere's great. Midna is easily the best.
Talk about a game that made me cry. The ending of that game destroyed me.
Really? Oh, that's so sweet.
I love Midna so much.
Yeah, Midna's great. And that one shocked me. That one just definitely surprised me. I didn't expect the ending of that one.
Yep.
But I should add that I never played Majora's Mask until like 2 years ago.
Sure.
And I didn't like it.
Okay.
But
it's very divisive. It's definitely, I get that for sure.
I did not like it. It felt like a weird, rushed, kind of thrown together kind of game. I don't want to get hate for that. I'm just saying, had I played it when I was like right after Ocarina of Time, maybe I would have totally loved it because I would have been looking for more of that.
Yeah.
But if you play Majora's Mask after like Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess and Wind Waker and all that stuff,
it's hard to go back to.
No, it's really hard to go back.
It definitely hits different because I did that where I played it like during what do you say? Like when I had Ocarina and when I was going through all that. And it almost felt like a modern day, what would be considered like an expansion now. It's like it kind of had that sort of feeling. So it definitely would hit different. And it was a rushed thing because they made it in like
wacky.
A year and a half or something. Yes. And so they had to reuse a lot of assets and then come up with, what's the lore reason why all these people look the same? And that's why it's this weird alternate dimension kind of story.
Really know. We're just going to yeah, so maybe I would have liked it more had I played it way back in like when I played Ocarina of Time, but because so Twilight Princess was my first dive into kind of a more creepy, kind of weird, off-putting kind of Zelda world, and I really, really appreciated it. This is a spoiler for Twilight Princess, but one of the most memorable moments for me was heading up to Zora's Domain. Can I spoil?
The game is like 20 years old. You're fine.
I know, but still. Okay.
You're good.
So when you're going up to Zora's Domain and everything's frozen.
Yep.
And you're coming up there and you're in like the Twilight realm or whatever, and you come around the corner and there's the camera pans back and you see the frozen waterfall.
Hmm.
For some reason, that sticks in my head as one of the most mind-blowing scenes because I just remember being like, that's a waterfall.
Sure.
Like, that's so much water.
Yeah.
And it's so not, it's so, like, it was so, I don't know. And that sounds so silly now, but that is one of the moments that really stuck with me from when I first played it. And I am also a firm believer that video games happen at certain times in our lives, and so I don't really know what was going on in my life at the time when I played Twilight Princess, but it was obviously an important time for me because,
Sure.
which is funny because I say I don't remember, but like that's kind of that when you play a game and it takes you hours and hours and hours, that follows along like your regular life, and so. Or maybe it was a bad time in my life, and that was when I escaped.
Yeah.
I don't fully remember. So there was something about that time with Twilight Princess that they met up perfectly to make it just be. I just thought it was great. I loved it. I thought it was great. But you know what? I love most Zelda games. But
Sure.
if I had to pick a favorite,
Yeah,
I
that's
would
one of my
probably
tops
say,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
And
And I played it on the GameCube. I didn't play the HD like Wii remaster or whatever. I played
sure.
it on like the original GameCube, and
Yep.
I loved it. I loved it. I loved the music. I loved Midna, and I loved all the dungeons. My favorite place in any game is always the desert, and I don't know why. And
Okay.
Twilight Princess totally
That was
totally
good. Good
yeah,
dungeon.
I loved it. I loved the Arbiter's Grounds. It gave me very it was just like I'm a jumpy, scaredy cat gamer, but Arbiter's
Sure.
Grounds was great because it was spooky, but it wasn't so scary that I like
Yeah.
couldn't sleep at night. You know what I
It,
mean?
that game's
Yeah.
release paralleled my life where when I was going through my emo phase, that game came out. And it's a
Uh,
real darker game. So like I think that's why I liked it so
this is
much.
for me.
It
This
was
is
like a
speaking to my
reflection of
soul.
yeah.
Zan
Um
is like me, speaking to my soul. Yeah, no,
exactly.
I don't know. I thought it was great, and a lot of people will disagree with me. I also played Wind Waker after Twilight Princess,
Sure.
and I think I would have probably liked Wind Waker more if I had played it before Twilight Princess.
Okay.
But I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't really know.
Yeah,
But
it's hard to
everything
know.
about the Zelda franchise is just phenomenal. I think it's great. Yes, a lot of them are formulaic, but
But they did it for a reason because they
well,
worked
yeah,
really well.
because it works. It
Yeah.
works. Some of the boss fights in Twilight Princess were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Arbiter's Grounds boss fight was really cool. I mean, my brother mentioned this when I interviewed him for GameSpark. He said Link is just your ultimate good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what is thrown at the guy, he will do what's right,
Yeah.
regardless. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
Hmm.
And like I said earlier, when you're playing a video game and you are the protagonist, you're the one that's making those decisions. I mean, we all want to be Link. Like he's just so great.
Yeah.
And he's great in everything he does.
Yeah.
Even when he's being silly.
Except the
Like
cartoon.
Skyward Sword. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's true.
Just
But
kidding.
even in Skyward Sword when he's kind of more cartoony and makes kind of weirder faces and stuff,
Yeah.
like because of like some of the weird cartoony stuff about Skyward Sword, he's just such a good person. And I think regardless of who you are, we all want to be like the good. We all want to be
Sure.
that hero.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Zelda speaks to me in that way. And I really love the character arc of Zelda, how she's become so much more of just a damsel in a castle, and
Yeah.
she's grown so much. Now we even get to like play her
Yeah.
coming in September,
Big
which is
news.
totally
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, so
Very
I love
excited.
watching how she's grown and everything. And are there things about the Zelda franchise that I kind of don't like some of the sidekicks and stuff? Yeah, sure. You know, the hey, sin over and over and over again. Like,
Sure.
but ultimately, I think it's a great,
It's a
great
net
game
positive
franchise.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great
Uh,
one.
you mentioned Skyward Sword. I really like Zelda, probably one of the most in that game.
Yep,
And
I
they
agree.
finally give you like a real like that sort of like what am I trying to say? Like the two kids growing up kind of together romance a little bit. Like
Yeah.
they really tease that at the beginning of Skyward
But
Sword. I
like they
love
know
that.
each other. It's
Yeah.
not just like
Yeah,
Ocarina of
exactly.
Time
That's
where it's
it.
like, hey, we just met. Check out
Yeah.
this creepy dude through the window.
They're like
I think
childhood
he's bad.
friends.
Yeah, they grew up together and there's chemistry there.
Yeah.
And then there's even like Groose that's kind of like, well, I'm gonna be alone with Zelda or whatever.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
all And I just appreciated it because it made her so much more real. She
Yeah.
seemed so much more. She wasn't just this regal kind of like out of reach person.
She was figuring out who she was in that game.
Yeah,
Like,
she was. One of my
so
favorite
good.
moments from Skyward Sword actually is probably when you see her for the first time, or when you see her after you've been chasing after her for a while.
Yeah.
And it's been a really long time since I've played it. But there's this moment where you see her and she smiles at you, and then Link's face suddenly changes and she starts to fall forward and he runs to catch her.
Sure.
And I just got goosebumps. I think it's a great scene.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I'm not
I know
really
the scene
down.
you're talking about.
Yeah, like I can't remember exactly what happens. But a lot of people are like, I wish they would just kiss already, or I wish they would just like they obviously love each other. But I don't know. I feel like it would ruin the franchise if suddenly they really truly became a couple once and for all. I
Yeah.
think that's part of the No, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if that would make it better or worse, but
I don't know either.
I like what I like the teases, I guess, more than,
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. And once that line is crossed, it can never be uncrossed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, but
And I only liked I don't think I would like that relationship for them in like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's more of like Link has such respect and like awe of Zelda that he's protecting her, right? Whereas the reason I like the sort of romance tease in Skyward Sword is because they were like childhood friends. So it's like
and they were children.
Yeah. But it's like I
mean,
believe
they kind of are in Breath of the Wild too, but
right.
I mean, kind of, I guess. I don't know. They seem older in Breath of the Wild, but
yeah, shorter but older. They look shorter. But like because they were like childhood friends.
So I'm okay with that. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off.
No, it's good. It's good. Because they're like childhood friends, I would like believe it more if there was some kind of romantic thing between them because they're so close, right? Yeah. But it's like that would feel out of place in like Twilight Princess because he literally just met her, right? So, I don't think it's overplayed, which is good. So that's.
I mean, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, maybe because he's her like royal knight or whatever, and they go everywhere together.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of tropey, where it's like, okay, like
I don't think it would fit as well. I think it's more of him just like his desire to like keep her safe, but it's not necessarily like a romantic.
And the reality is, like, who knows if he actually does have feelings for her or not? We don't know because he doesn't talk. And
again,
because
except for the cartoon.
Well,
in which he definitely wants that kiss.
That's true. But if you look at like the game,
I'm kidding. That doesn't exist.
No, I know. I'm like the cartoon can just be. That's like Metroid: The Other M. We just don't talk about it.
Sure.
I don't know. It's and we totally just got off on this romantic tangent of Link and Zelda. We're shipping the two of them together, but I don't know. It's hard to say because like I think he would. Link is the type of character that, regardless of who he was asked to watch over, he would watch over them and he would give his life for them because that's who Link is. So I think sometimes it gets kind of confusing because they're both young and beautiful, and he's the knight and she's the princess, and so it's easy to be like, oh, they're made for each other.
Yeah.
But like, what if he falls for some Kakariko girl? I don't know. Like, that's fine. He can do that. That's okay. That's totally fine.
And you actually get a little bit of that with Mipha in. Like, she's clearly in love with Link in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, which I'm not really sure how that works because she's Zamora.
We're not going to get into specifics.
Whatever, that's fine. Like, I was slightly confused about that, but I was like, I mean, okay, like, whatever. Because then you have Rauru and Sonia, so I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe in this world, who knows?
There's that one cutscene, and it's in, like, one of the final trailers for Breath of the Wild. I cannot watch it without getting choked up, is when Zelda like breaks down and she like starts crying that she's like
and
failed
she falls onto him.
Oh my god, I cannot watch that without
and he just holds on to her and he doesn't say anything. But I remember, it's funny that you say that because I remember being very struck by that scene in the trailer. I remember thinking, here we have, I mean, Link's not showing any emotion because he never does. But well, that's not true. Skyward Sword, he shows a lot of emotion. But but here is Zelda like completely, and this was something I appreciated about Breath of the Wild. This was Zelda being totally raw with her
Yeah.
emotions. She was regal, but she thought she'd failed,
Yeah.
and she totally abandoned all
It was
her
her breaking
all
point.
her yeah, it was just like, what else do you do? I mean, crying isn't going to help either, but she's trying so hard. And then when you watch kind of the memories that lead up to that and
Yeah.
everything that lead up to that moment, I remember being very struck by that as well, and being really touched by just how vulnerable she was in that. And then they turned that up to 11 in Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Anyway, yeah, that was that. And once again, that's just her growth.
Yeah,
She's becoming more of an involved character, and I appreciate that a lot. It's
for
about
sure.
time. It's about
Yeah,
time.
agreed.
It's great. Yeah.
So, speaking of this, actually is a good segue talking about different things we like about different Zeldas, like different games, I should say. So, we'll do a little creative exercise here.
Okay.
If assume you were given full creative control,
Oh no.
what would be some elements for a dream Zelda game that you would produce? Whether it's a genre change, composer you'd want to have do the music, voice talent you'd want to have for specific characters, or like if the setting would be wildly different, and just give me a couple elements that you think would end up being a part of that final piece.
Oh, that is such an interesting question. You sent me these questions, and I thought about these questions, but this is probably the hardest one I have to answer, because I don't I'm a creative person, but I'm not a creative person. I'm a really good, like, copycat, and
Sure.
I consider myself kind of creative sometimes, but, like, man, to come up with like a video game whole idea.
And it could just be like things you like from other games that, oh man, I wish Zelda would do that
I
sometime, or
really
stuff like
love
that.
the idea of the Twilight. I was really
Okay.
hoping the Twilight would come back. I love the little squares that come together to
Mm-hmm.
create, like, when the I mean, when you're running around in Twilight, the little squares are
They're
kind of
just
floating
like,
anyway.
yeah,
They're
drifting.
just kind of everywhere, but I
Yeah.
also really love, like, the portals that go
Mm-hmm.
above the in the
Like where the
sky.
enemies spawn or whatever. And
Yep,
yeah.
those freaking things with the mask faces or whatever. Um, uh, so I really loved Twilight, and there were rumors that they were going to bring the Twilight back in Tears of the Kingdom, and I shouldn't have believed them because they're just
Sure.
rumors. But I was like, that would be so cool. I would
Yeah.
love another game in, like, the Twilight kind of ish. I mean, I know technically the Mirror of Twilight is broken and whatever, but it would be really cool to revisit the Twilight. I thought that was a really cool idea. I will say, as much as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were phenomenal, I did not love a lot of the voice acting. I thought a lot of
Sure.
the voice acting was kind of weak. I
So
really
I played first through English, and I wasn't a big fan
mm,
of Breath of the Wild, at least. I credit where it's due in Tears of the Kingdom, Matt Mercer, Ganondorf, 10 out of 10
yeah,
every time.
there are a
But
couple that I'm like, those that worked,
yeah,
but there were a lot that I was like,
if you ever revisit it, I would switch it to Japanese. I find the Japanese voices actually fit the characters a lot better in that game, and that to me felt like a new experience. And I was like, yeah, please do
really good
more
idea.
voices. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's a good idea.
If you ever revisit
Yeah,
it, that'd be a thing I would try.
I don't even really love Zelda's voice for whatever reason, and I
Sure.
can't even really put my finger on it, but there's something about it that just doesn't, I don't know.
Sometimes it
And
doesn't
that's,
fit for you. That's all.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's not to say that the person who did it
Nope.
did a bad job or
Nope.
anything like that. I mean, I actually, this is one of my biggest issues with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, was I didn't like Sephiroth's voice. I thought he sounded bored.
Sure.
Thought he sounded like he was not invested, and not that this is a spoiler or anything. This is simply Susiegrace's opinion.
Yep.
But I just was like, voice actors make all the difference. And he
Yes.
just didn't ever sound like he was invested. He just sounded like he was just reading off of a script.
Sure.
Whatever. So I would probably go for some stronger voice acting. But
Give me one character that you would want a specific voice actor that you like to lend their voice to.
oh
Even if it's
gosh,
a
I don't
returning
know.
character from another game that you'd want in this new Twilight setting.
this new Twilight setting, like if you could combine all these Zelda games, like Twilight setting with Ultra Hand would be really cool.
Oh, okay.
Or,
Now we're
like
talking.
that kind of stuff. And like you take all the elements of like, you take, because I really liked elements from both of them. I liked
Yeah,
being able to do the bombs. I loved the square bombs.
sure.
So brilliant. So you can chuck them up on a hill. Like,
And then
that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. So I loved if you could combine those and then put them in like some sort of Twilighty realm,
Okay.
or my sister, and I'll get to the voice actor in a second. I'm thinking. My sister mentioned the other day, my brother was messing around with doing some kind of music composition, and he said, "Give me an idea for a video game level for me to compose music for." And my sister said something like a really dark, damp area that's full of like fungi and flora and fauna and whatnot. And then the deeper you get, you realize you're actually inside a living creature.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That sounded
That could
whether
be
or
a
not that would
dungeon
make
in
a
your
great
game.
yeah, whether or not that sounds like a Zelda game, I was like, that sounds like a super cool level. I've played games where I've gone inside like creatures as dungeons. There's
Yep.
or
There's
I
there's
guess
one in
well, I guess
Ocarina of Time.
oh yeah, I guess that's true. You go
Yep.
into Jabu Jabu in multiple Zelda games.
Yep.
As far as voice acting goes, gosh, I don't know. Video game voice actors I don't know as well, but like I really love Jason Isaac's voice. He has a really, really wonderful voice. So he could
Okay.
play like Zelda's father, or he could play I'm trying to think of what other like male
So I have a pitch.
characters. Oh, what's a pit? What's your pitch?
Whatever the villain would be in this Return to Twilight, realm, I
Mm.
Mark Hamill as whatever villain that ends up being, because he plays like the Joker and all the Batman animated stuff, and I could hear
Oh.
him doing like a real creepy Twilight
Or
villain.
like did you say Mark
Mark
Hamill?
Hamill, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Mark Hamill, everything he does voice wise is
yeah,
just golden.
yeah.
He's fantastic, and he can do a super great creepy voice. You know who else can do a super creepy voice is Christian Bale, weirdly.
Sure,
He can do kind of a creepy, like guttural kind of voice. And there's kind of this whole like, well, should they give Link a voice or shouldn't they, or
sure.
whatever? And
Hey,
I
you
don't
got
think
full
they
creative
should.
control. It's your decision.
I wouldn't. I
No,
would
okay.
not give him nope, because I feel like once again, that's a line that if you cross, it can never
Yeah,
be undone.
yeah.
And when you have a character that's silent for so long,
It's
you're
hard
gonna
to
make
break that.
everybody mad if
Yeah.
you're not gonna make everybody. And so one of the coolest things I've ever seen them do with a silent protagonist was when I played Metroid Dread, and there's a moment where Samus pushes a button on her
Yeah.
suit, and
And
she
it
speaks,
translates.
but it translates. And so
Yeah.
you're like, is that a real voice? We don't know. We don't know. But it was really cool because it was like,
Talk about like a goosebumps moment is when you
yeah,
start
it was
hearing her
just,
speak their language.
they
Oof.
gave her a voice, but it was a recorded voice. And like, I was okay with that.
Yep.
But that's why we don't talk about the other M, because I think they gave her a voice.
I like things about that game. The cutscenes and voice work is not one of them.
I've never played it. Like I pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I played all the Metroids that matter.
Yeah. Sure.
So, creative, taking
So
over
we're
a Zelda
going.
game.
We got a few elements. So we're going back to the Twilight.
Okay.
We'll say Mark Hamill and Christian Bale voicing two villains in the game.
Yep.
Um,
I would love to see a female villain. I would love to see a
Sure.
female villain. I'm trying to think if there ever has been a female villain. I mean, there've been female bosses like Twin Rova, and
Yeah, I don't think there's been like a main female villain.
no, I don't think there's been
Was it Minish Cap? No. Link Between Worlds, I think.
thinking that too, but to be totally honest, I don't know.
I don't remember. I
Because
forget.
like the hair's really long, but I'm like,
I can't
oh,
remember.
like,
Yeah.
I have
kind
no
of a
idea.
guess.
So I'd love to see a female villain, or even just like a female male duo, like could
Sure.
be like in Jack and Daxter, there's like the bad like Gaul and Maya or whatever, like and I'd love to see like a female
It
character.
could even be like the Link and Zelda Twilight counterparts, but they're evil or
Well,
something.
yeah, like we have Dark Link, right?
Yeah.
We've done this before where we've had this dark high rule, or like low rule, I think it is,
Yep.
in Link Between Worlds and all that stuff. So I guess technically that there was a female. In Link Between Worlds, yeah, you're right. She was I was thinking of the person that does the pictures, but no, there's the other
I was
girl.
too, but yeah, I'm remembering now
Yeah,
there was
there's
that
the
other
other
girl.
one.
Yeah.
But that's really kind of the only I don't know.
Okay.
I'd love to see a female baddie. But I also would love to see a game where Zelda takes the lead, and we're getting one in
Yeah.
September, where Link
We
is
got
no
that
more,
wish.
or at
I
least not
wrote
for a
that
while.
question before that was announced. So we
You can
manifested
see
it
the
in some way.
future. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
excited. I'm excited to see what that has to offer
Yeah.
because I
And
mean,
it looks like
obviously,
it has like some of the creative problem solving of Tears of the Kingdom with that echo like summoning items. So
oh yeah.
I'm excited for that for sure.
Yeah, one of my GameSpark interviews, my friend said Nintendo is at its best when they reinvent instead of copy.
Yeah.
Like when they totally come up with something new and like they did with Breath of the Wild and then like they did again with Tears of the Kingdom and now again with Echoes of Wisdom,
Yeah.
they are thinking so far outside the box. And I remember asking him what the same type of question, like what would you see, like what would you like to see, what should the next installment be? And he said, I hope it's something I can't even think of,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I want it to be something that just makes, and we're going down this path of making every player's playthrough so unique, because I can watch my brother and my sister play Tears of the Kingdom and be like, I never would have done it that way.
Well, and that's
Like
why
I never.
it's literally like one of the reasons why like I found your content is I wanted to watch people play that game and like because every
Yeah.
solution would be different, right?
Yep. And I've had people comment on my Tears of the Kingdom videos saying, you don't have to do that, right? Or this will happen, right? Or like, I hate the way you play. I'm like, then why
Yeah.
are you here? Then
It's
I
funny
mean, I
thing
guess you
about
have to click on it.
yeah, it's a funny thing about this website. There are a million other videos you could watch
So
other than
many.
this one.
And I'm glad that you felt like you needed to tell me, but like, I'm just having a good time, man. Like, did I beat the game? I did. So it's not like it wasn't working. It's not like I
Yeah,
was going, why isn't this working? So I
right.
was like, I beat it. I finished it, but it just goes to show I don't gatekeep games. Like,
No,
you play it however you want, man. And that I think is what they wanted for Tears of the Kingdom and for Breath of the Wild and stuff, because there is
100%.
no way you can play through those games two times, more than once in the same way.
No.
Every single time you play it, it's going to be different because, and I've done that, played Breath of the Wild again and gone
Yep.
in a different direction. You get different powers at different times. And so it makes certain things. I'm trying to like go around the depths without Tulin right now. And let me tell you, that is rough. It is so hard because trying to get anywhere, but I'm too impatient. So I'm like, no, I need to find all these light roots. And then whatever.
Yeah.
So it changes your gameplay absolutely, and it makes things harder or easier. You get that Rito power in Breath of the Wild that sends you up really
Yeah.
high. Like that would make so many things so much easier if
I
you got
think
that very, very
my
first.
first playthrough, I think I went there third, like in terms of like
I think I
which
did
areas
too.
I did. And I was like,
Yeah.
how, like, why did no
I
one
wish
tell
I
me?
would have had this.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember thinking the same thing, being like, well, shoot, I wish I would have had this like forever ago, but
Yeah.
but whatever.
That's the fun
So
of it.
I love the idea of turning Zelda, like I couldn't have ever imagined this, but I love the idea of turning Zelda into a sandbox game and
Yeah.
making it be like, whatever you can think of, do it. There is no right or wrong way to do anything, because if
Right.
you can do it, then it's the right way. It doesn't matter. So they're taking away that whole, I mean, they're taking away, but people will still gatekeep and be like, you're actually doing it wrong.
Oh, yes, they
Okay,
will.
well, like it's Ultrahan,
Yeah.
so you can either use a rocket or a balloon, or you can use a wing, or you can use whatever.
Yeah.
Props to you if you did it a different way, but this is the way I'm doing it, and I love that. It makes
Yeah.
it makes every single thing unique.
When you
And
have
I
like you have that moment where you're like, will this work? And you start doing it and you're like, I think it might work. And then you do it and you're like, holy shit, it worked.
oh gosh, you're like, I
Yeah.
can't believe that actually worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that about that game.
they made it so there were really no right or wrong answers. Like
No.
you had to get the stone to the thing to make the shrine appear. However you did it,
Yeah.
totally fine with them. They didn't care. They weren't going to stop you either
Nope.
way, unless you warp there. and then they just
Yeah,
stopped
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it.
They have some limits. Yeah.
Yes.
So actually, speaking about that, like just how much we seem to both really love how Nintendo handled changing the game into this sandbox kind of open world experience. How did you feel? How much did you know about the like what the format change was going to be, and how did you feel about going into that when Breath of the Wild was coming out? Like, were you following like that it was going to be this really different adventure, or were you just discovering that kind of in real time?
I discovered it pretty much in real time.
Okay.
I remember watching the trailer, but I watched the trailer so long before it was released that
Sure.
I'd kind of forgotten a lot about it. And I borrowed my friend's Switch to play it because I remember saying, there's no reason to buy a console for one game.
You learned.
Lapsed in Nintendo. Yeah, so I borrowed it, and she was a streamer, so she was like, "Well, you can have it when I'm done streaming it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I started it a little later than I would have liked. And I remember when I came out onto the Great Plateau for the first time, and like I said, it was my very first ever open world exploration game.
Yeah.
When I came out onto the plateau, I just remember being so speechless at, first of all, the graphics, just
Yeah.
that you could see everything.
The draw
And then
distance in that game is insane for running on a
totally
Switch.
unreal.
Yeah.
Totally unreal. And I remember I remember having like this feeling in my chest of being like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
this is gonna be." And I remember after playing for maybe an hour, I remember being like, I have to get my hands on this game. Like, I have to buy a Switch. Where am I supposed to get a Switch now? My Switch is a Facebook Marketplace Switch because
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get one because they were gone.
Sure.
And I called, my mom was living in Utah at the time. I called my mom in Utah and was like, I'm going to call every single store in your
Sure.
area. And if there's one that's available, I need you to go get it for me and then ship it to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I called every store in Utah. I called every store in Austin, Texas, where I was living. I called in San Antonio, Texas. I called everywhere, and nobody had a Switch.
Yeah.
And so I went on Facebook Marketplace and I found this guy that was like, I got it for me and my kids, but then I got a new job and things got busy. And so it's in brand new condition. My Switch is still that Switch to
Nice.
this day, and it's been great and it's run great.
Yeah.
And so I did eventually get my own Switch, but I did beat Breath of the Wild on my friend's Switch. And I remember standing on top of that tower on the Great Plateau and looking through the scope and seeing something crawling around on the volcano.
Yeah.
And being like,
From the Great Plateau. That's
from the Great
wild.
Plateau.
Yeah.
It was rendered, everything. And
It's
I was
insane.
like, what is that?
I don't understand how this game works on a Switch.
And then I looked over and there's this giant bird floating
Yep.
in the air. I thought it was a spaceship at first. I didn't realize it was a bird. And I was like, hey. And then when I had to go up to that shrine in the cold area, and I was like, okay, Zelda is linear. You have to get an item. You have to get an item. I
Oh,
can't
in
get
the
there right
plateau,
now.
like in that
Yeah,
first
in the
area.
plateau,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to go 4 shrines, and one of them is up in the cold. And I remember running up there, and it was like, you can't be here because you're wearing almost
Yep.
nothing, and I was like, okay, well, obviously I need an item. That was all that was going through my head. It never occurred to me that I could use. Well, and I remember being like cutting grass and just finding crickets and being like, where are the
Where's
hearts?
the
I don't
hearts?
understand. And then all of a sudden I was standing there with like half a heart, and I saw this wild boar, and I remember going, I have to hunt. What? I mean, I had never ever played a game like that. Now, if I had played something like Horizon Zero Dawn or like, I don't know, other open world exploration games that kind of set you up for that, then obviously I would have been more prepared.
Sure.
But I hadn't. And so it just never occurred to me that I could just climb a mountain. Or I could just like go wherever after the Great Plateau. I could literally go to Ganon. There was no linearity. I could just do whatever I wanted.
Yep.
I got the cutscene with Prince Sidon, and I was like, "Ooh, I must have picked the right one to go to because I got a cutscene." And I was so excited.
Yeah.
You get a cutscene no matter where you go.
Yeah.
Like, you go to Rito, you get a cutscene. You go to the desert, you get a cutscene. You go to the, and I didn't realize that. So it really blew my mind wide open. And so
Yeah.
I was expecting that with Tears of the Kingdom.
Yep.
Like, I was expecting another, obviously this was the same world, this was the same
Yep.
setup, all that stuff. But the whole switch up in the powers with like Ultra Hand and turning it into a complete sandbox game where you could build whatever the heck you wanted.
Yeah.
And you could fuse weapons together and you could make a sword and a spear and like I just and I am and like I said, I'm not a super creative person when it comes to stuff like that. And so I love seeing what other people have done because I couldn't even
There was months where I would watch like there was like this one channel, I don't remember the name of the channel now, but it would be like weekly Tears of the Kingdom like build like crazy builds or whatever, and I watched those every week for months because it was
pulverizers, lasers, like barbed wire trap, like absolute insanity. My husband isn't even a gamer, and he would roll over while I'm like playing in bed, and he'd roll over and be like, "Look at this," and he'd show me something somebody made, and I'd be like, "I just can't even."
I don't have that either. I can't.
Space. Yeah, people were sending Koroks to space, and like, I just could not believe how the freedom that they gave us.
So crazy.
And so yeah, Breath of the Wild was definitely one of the most mind-blowing video game experiences I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
Because I just had never. And I don't know, maybe if I'd played another open world or exploration game before that, then maybe it wouldn't have, but I hadn't.
It still had, so I've played a lot of like those types of games, and it still had a similar, like, how did they do this kind of feeling?
Yes. I'm so glad.
Especially because it was their first time, Nintendo's first time making an open world game. How did they do it so perfectly the first try?
I don't know.
It's crazy.
And looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, so Breath of the Wild was a test.
Yes.
It was like beta.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, let's get down to business. Like this one did really well. It's time to pull out the big guns. And then they did. And they built on everything else. They built on everything. I think Tears of the Kingdom is a superior game. But I do think Breath of the Wild still has playability, still matters, is still important because there's so many elements of it that Tears of the Kingdom is missing. Like the Guardians. Oh my gosh. The first time I saw that Guardian.
Talk about anxiety-inducing music.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know piano could be so scary. And like, and then the mix of like old world but new world technology was really cool. And I remember being really loving that kind of aspect in Skyward Sword with the time stones.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite mechanics. I thought that was so cool. Let's go back to putting stuff in like a Zelda game that I have full creativity for. The time stones were really cool.
Okay.
The time puzzles and all that stuff were really, really cool. And like moving the time stones around. So it's on like a cart and like grass is growing and then dying. Yeah, it was really, so really cool. That was really, really cool. So that would be another thing that I could see like throwing in there. But I mean, there were certain things that Tears of the Kingdom didn't have that Breath of the Wild did have, like bombs that you could just create whenever, and like the Guardians, and they had lots of different.
It had enough different between them that they still feel unique enough apart from each other. But if you play them sequentially, Tears of the Kingdom definitely feels like an upgrade just in terms of the breadth of that game,
Yeah, and the story is better.
Yeah,
and it was so much more emotional. I never cried in Breath of the Wild. I didn't ever really necessarily feel, and that's just me personally.
Yeah,
I didn't ever feel like I got emotional. But man, Tears of the Kingdom like ripped my heart to shreds multiple times. Like I was definitely not expecting that.
No,
because Breath of the Wild did it, so I was like, yay!
Yeah, just going in,
it's gonna be great.
A fun adventure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
When my brother was home for the holidays, he loves open world games, but he doesn't have a Switch, and so I was like, okay, like just play the Great Plateau, like just play Breath of the Wild, do the tutorial area, 2 hours, whatever it takes you, just to like get a sense of what this game is, and then he played it for like 30 hours that week. But it's like,
of course you did.
Yeah, and then went home, bought a Switch, and bought Breath of the Wild, and then dumped like 150 hours into it.
I was waiting for it. I knew you were going to say that because what else does somebody? That's what I did.
Yeah.
I was like,
That's
I
why when
played
you
it and was
said
like,
that.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I have to get my hands on this game. And now I have this giant Switch library and it's my favorite console ever. And
Yeah.
is it the most powerful? No. But I love playing these games handheld, like wrapped up cozy in my blankets in
Yep.
bed. I love doing that. I love all the indie games that they've come out with on the Nintendo Switch. I
Yep.
just think it's a phenomenal, phenomenal console. And I love that Nintendo has given these little indie games. I mean, I guess Steam does too, but I grew up as a console girl. So
Sure.
Steam never even existed
Yeah, yeah.
until I turned like honestly, until I started working with my friend that I borrowed the Switch from that was a streamer. And she was like, "Well, yeah, I play it on PC and like whatever game she was playing." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Well,
Sure.
yeah, like I play, so I was like in my 20s by the time I realized like PCs were like another type of console, but they
Right.
weren't a console. And then I would watch her stream and be like, "Wait, you're using a mouse?
Oh
What?"
God.
I
Yeah.
was so surprised. So, yeah, I grew up with nothing but consoles.
Sure.
So, I'm definitely partial to consoles. I'm definitely not opposed to Steam and playing games on a PC, but I just never
Yeah, it's a
grew
comfort
up
thing.
with that
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, I never grew up with that, but I love being able to play while I'm under the blankets in my bed. That's
Yeah.
like my favorite. Right before I go to bed, I
That's
can
your
do
nice
some.
wind down.
Yeah, that's my wind
Your
down
you
after
time.
momming all day. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's so fun. The example of my brother playing it. I loved watching him, and I wouldn't tell him. He'd be like doing this puzzle really like in just not seeing it, and I'm just
Making
like,
the hard way.
yeah, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
If he asked, I would give him a hint or whatever. But there were some really funny moments of him
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
solving it the wrong way, but in the funniest way possible, and that stuff. So
But it's
that's
like,
why I
but I
love
did it.
watching. Yeah, yeah.
But I did it. You
Uh,
can't complain because it worked. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so
Yep.
fun watching that stuff. So we talked about it a little bit, but like I know it's been over a year now, if you can believe it, but that Tears of the Kingdom came out.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier like those opening moments, and how like hard that hit you, and literally same. I think everyone took that screenshot where Link is falling and the title card. Everyone has that
Yep.
exact screenshot on their Switch,
Oh
because
my
it was
gosh.
just such a cool moment. But I think one of the first videos I found of yours was the one of you watching all of the tier like
Memories.
cutscenes or the memories in order, and just getting so emotional at that. And
Gosh.
the way you described Zelda's sort of like her bravery, or I forget the exact wording that you used, but like it's like right when she like takes the tear, and it's like she knows what she has to do, and it's not gonna be pleasant, but she has to do it, and the way she does it anyway. And I think that was one of the ones that really got you to kind of break
Oh my
down.
gosh.
And it hit me because I just hearing you describe it, it's like, man, I don't think I realized the weight of like, it was obviously emotional, but I don't know, you described it in a way that like made me look at it even more heavy than I initially did.
Well, that moment was okay. So can we are we spoiling
Spoilers,
this?
yeah, I'll put a spoiler
Okay.
alert in the description. We'll talk.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
So I remember I got the Master Sword before I knew who Zelda was.
Sure.
I that was a total. I was like, if you watch the video now, I'm like, that was so cool. Getting you the Master Sword out of a dragon. That was so cool. Of course, now I'm like, okay. So
Yeah.
I didn't have any idea what the significance was, and
Yeah.
anyway, I also got the Master Sword wearing the skydiving outfit. So I looked like an owl. It was bad. Anyway, so which actually I'm kind of grateful I didn't know that that was Zelda, because that would have made it even worse.
Yeah.
But so I had a feeling. I remember thinking about it one night and being like, that dragon's hair is the same color
Sure.
as Zelda's. But I remember in my head being like, that doesn't make any sense. No, it's just a coincidence. That doesn't make any sense. It's a total coincidence. They're just using the same shade of yellow, whatever.
Yeah. It's
But
just
it
to save
wouldn't-
memory.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
save on resources or
Yeah.
whatever. But it wouldn't leave my mind. And I was like, but it looks like her little bob,
Yeah.
especially. Not her long hair, but her little short bob. So I thought and thought and thought about it. And I was like, there's no way. I don't understand how that would work. How would that work? And so as I was traversing through I got all the memories You know what? I don't think I did watch them in order, actually. I think I just watched them as I found them, but I can't quite remember.
Sure.
I did a poll with my viewers and was like, what should I do? Should I find them in order or whatever? And they were like, just find them and watch them as you find them. So that's what we did. And so one of the, so there's that, so obviously we come to find that, yes, that is what happened. And it all makes sense. And I got emotional right then when I realized that she'd been flying around for how long?
Thousands of years? Who knows how long that was? Yeah.
Like, I remember asking, does she remember? You know, and I was really emotional. And then I was able to kind of pull myself together to go find the next one. But that scene when she's actually standing there with the Master Sword, ready to do it with the dragon tear.
Yeah.
There is no need for words because she looks so frightened as she is shaking as she's reaching for that sword. And I think what probably struck me the most about that is that she didn't know if what she was going to do was going to work.
Yeah.
And she was sacrificing her own self for the good of millions of people that she doesn't even know.
Across time, you know.
Across time, just on a hope that this one person will do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
That we will do what needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
And I just really don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could sacrifice myself like that. I don't know, even though I know it's for the good of all these people, how terrifying. She was alone. She didn't have any support. She just did it all on her own. And it's a beautiful scene because she says, protect them all. And she's terrified, but she's thinking of other people instead of thinking of herself. And she's super scared. But I don't know, like it struck me so deeply because and then I went back to the whole, I was thinking about the idea that she knew all these sages were getting together and all these people were getting together and they were going to do this big battle. And she knew it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And yet, what do? You go through with it. You hope. Maybe you were wrong. You go through with it. But I just was so... First of all, I was struck by just the storyline. It was really sad. And second of all, I don't feel like I've ever experienced an emotional moment in a video game like that, probably since I played Final Fantasy VII and Aerith died.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago.
That's my big one.
Yeah, that was shocking to me because back then I was like, this is a video game. Like, I've been playing like Donkey Kong Country. I've been like looking for bananas. I wasn't, that was so shocking to me that they would kill off one of your party members, one of these main characters. And so that deep and emotional of a moment was just so shocking to me. And then I was crying because it was sad. And then of course when you come out of that memory and Zelda is flying above you and she roars and then you see the tears in her own eyes.
Ugh.
And then the silent princesses it's just the way they did it was so so well done. It was brilliant storytelling.
Yeah.
And there were so many things about it that were so emotional. And then I also just was kind of sort of like basking in just the glory of it. I was like, this storytelling is bananas. It is so well done.
It's so fun to like have a game surprise you like that, you know?
Yes, and just kind of at the mastery of it. I was like, this storytelling is so good. This is so good. This is what we look for in books or movies. We all look for those movies that'll make us just be like, I can't believe who can come up with something like this. Yeah. That was so incredible. And then knowing that like she had poured her heart and soul into that sword on a hope that you would do what was right. And somebody made a comment on that video. I think it was my finale video that said something like, the devs were so amazing because they led up to every decision they made in the story made it so they didn't force you. They gave you the option to land that final blow. But they did it in a way that we wouldn't want to do anything but land that final blow.
Sure.
Like there was no way, like after everything that happened, there was no way we were
and that fight in the sky and she catches you when he knocks you off. Oh, it's so
that's
good.
when that's when somebody was like, that she'll catch you, right? Like, you don't have to paraglide. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, paragliding was pretty second, like, on my list of moves. Like, it was a pretty much muscle memory at that point.
That was one of my things where I was falling and I was like, she's coming this way. I was like, is she going to catch me? Is this going to work? And it did. And I was like, oh, that was so cool.
Yeah, see, I kind of wish I'd experienced that, but I was scared.
Yeah.
But I was also like trying to figure process what was happening, like everything. And I remember somebody commenting and being like, "Man, I bet Susie's Switch is sounding like a jet engine right now." And I thought that's probably true, but I had headphones on and I couldn't hear. But I don't know. There were so many the Tears video was just, or like just the whole Tears experience and everything, just watching it all come together. And then now that it's been a year, I'm actually replaying Tears of the Kingdom right now. I went out of town, decided to start a new game while I was on the airplane.
Sure.
And watching it from the beginning is so fascinating now that I know everything that happens, because the beginning was so far away from when I was beating the game. I was like, I don't remember what happened at the beginning. I just remember jumping off that thing and being like, I remember Link like losing his arm and all that stuff, but like I didn't remember these moments of like Zelda and I knew
seeing
she fell,
the pictures
obviously
on the wall that now actually make sense to you.
Yes. I'd forgotten all that. And so replaying it now, putting the pieces together and being like, oh my gosh, she's coming to each of these sages and she's going, there will be a time when there will be a swordsman that's going to need your help, because she knew. And at the time, the first time I played it, I was like, this is great. My head hurts. But now it all makes sense. And it was just really masterfully done. And I mean, really, when you look at anybody doing any sort of sacrifice like that, any sort of like, you look at like Lord of the Rings. I mean, Lord of the Rings makes me really emotional because this is one person that has chosen to take upon themselves this burden for the good of millions of people that they don't know.
Right.
And I don't know if I could do that. And I'd like to say that I could, but
who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like maybe if I were actually faced with it, but it's just, you look at these, even like Harry Potter. Harry Potter has to make a choice whether he's going to take the easy route or he's going to take the right route. And I think that's a really good lesson for all of us. I think it is in Harry Potter. I think somebody says there comes a time, I can't remember if it's Dumbledore or Sirius Black or whatever. I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan, but somebody says there comes a time where you must choose between what is right and what is easy. And I think that's a really, really important lesson that everybody needs to learn, because everybody's going to come across a time like that. It may not be sacrificing your own self to save millions of people, but my baby monitor is going off because the battery's almost dead.
Oh, sure.
But everybody is going to face some time in their life when they have to choose between what's right and what's easy.
Yeah.
So I just really appreciated the storyline, and it gave me so much respect for Zelda. It's like I said earlier, like she's no longer this little damsel in the castle. She's
her own beast. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one line that when I reflected on, I think I was watching a trailer for the game after I had finished it, because I like to see like, oh, what did they show me? And I didn't know what it was yet or whatever. And when they talk about like what would happen to her if she, absorbed the tear or whatever, that like you lose yourself, like you don't know anything, you lose yourself. And at the end of one of the trailers, I might get choked up even repeating it. It's like very end of the trailer, she's like looking up in the sky and she's like, Link, you have to find me. It's not just find me in this space. It's like, I won't even know where I am.
I won't even know where I am.
Yeah.
You have to find me. I never thought about it until you just said that.
Yeah. That hit me so much harder.
And that's why when I was looking through the tears, that's why I was like, does she know? Does she remember?
Right.
Because she does get those tears in her eyes, but like, we don't really know why.
Right.
But it was done so well. And I loved that it made you realize that she was really there with you kind of all along the whole way.
Just like flying above all the time.
She was never as big of a character in any of the other Zelda games. Like she was important, but like, and she helped. Like Yeah, she
Yeah.
wasn't present, and she may not have really been, but she was essential for
Yeah.
taking down Ganon. And I mean, yeah, okay, so she was essential in Twilight Princess because she has her little arrows of light and all that stuff, but it just felt there was so much more. She had sacrificed and given so much in Tears of the Kingdom. And she did in Twilight Princess too, I guess. She kind of sacrificed herself to save Midna, but I don't know. Maybe if we had seen Twilight Princess play out in a remastered version, a lot like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where they
Sure.
fleshed the story out
Expand
more.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it looked more realistic and whatnot, maybe I would have the same emotional reaction.
Sure.
But that scene where she actually sacrifices herself and she goes through the draconification
Brutal.
or whatever was so well done. It was
Yeah.
it was storytelling that didn't need words because she
Yeah.
was so, you could tell how terrified she was. Was she in pain? I don't know. Was she
Yeah.
just scared? Maybe. I'm not sure, but she could barely even grab that sword.
Yeah.
And her whole face spoke volumes. It did better than any words could. She didn't say I'm scared or whatever. She just, it was all over. The body language spoke volumes, and it
Yeah.
was just really, really, really well done. And it just hit me so hard. I just felt awful for her.
That was
She was
honestly the
alone and
video I found first of yours, and that led me to your Twitch and led me to your Discord. Like, it was that video that honestly I was like, someone gets it. I don't feel alone. I feel validated that someone else cried at this.
You should feel validated because it is, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got so many comments saying, "Oh my gosh, I felt the same way," or I cried at the beginning, just at that title scene, right? I cried
Yeah.
then, and I had so many feelings. And I had a lot, I may have had one negative comment, one
Yeah.
hate comment that was really rude. But ultimately, I also had hundreds of other people that were like, "Oh, I felt the same way, and I love Zelda, and this franchise has kept me going," and so many positive things.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just hate comments. I got a lot of people that said, "I feel the same way," or
Yeah.
I love it as much as you do," or whatever. And ultimately, I chose, going back to your earlier question, I chose to focus on those and be like, okay, well, this guy's just like the one child out
Yeah.
of all these different people, because here are all these hundreds of people that are like, "Oh man, no, this game totally ruined me, like wrecked me emotionally. I loved it. It was great. It was amazing. I love Zelda. I would do anything for Zelda,"
Yeah.
And I would too, especially now. I'm like, you're in it. You were in it for the long haul. Like, you almost did more than even Link did, because Link would probably do the same thing, but like, I felt so inadequate. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so I like did some sword work, but like,
But
I
hold
did,
on,
like,
let me go catch like 100 Koroks. I'll be right back, Zelda.
yeah,
Hang
yeah.
on to
I'm
that
like,
sword
"Oh,
for me. I'll
sorry,
be back.
I need to go cook." Yeah. So, I don't know. That I'm really grateful. I almost didn't stream Tears of the Kingdom because I was thinking it was too big of a game, and it was just, but ultimately I decided to, because while I was playing games, I was like, I really want to be playing Tears of the Kingdom right now. I really want to be playing Tears of the Kingdom right now. And so finally I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I started streaming it later in
Yeah.
my gameplay, but I'm so glad I did, because it's brought a lot of people into my community, which has been great.
Yeah.
And I've found so many people that also, like you said, like experienced that, cried, felt a lot of emotion. And so you and anybody else who's listening to this that has ever cried over a video game, you're totally validated, because
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
stories. If I'd seen that in a movie, I would have cried. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? That was so sad.
Yep.
That was so sad. It was so heartbreakingly sad. And how old is Zelda? Like 20? I don't know, 19? Like, I don't know how
they're
old they
like
are.
20 something in this game. Like,
Yeah.
they're like young 20-year-old. Yeah.
What 20-year-old do you know that is gonna like? I mean, especially in like this day and age, like
Yeah.
that's
not gonna
crazy.
happen.
So I was really, really touched by that. I loved that they involved her so much more, and you may not realize it until you hit that moment. And then if you do things right, well, I don't want to say right, because there is no right or wrong way, but if you get the Master Sword after that,
Sure.
I imagine it's a much more like
But
deep
I think
emotional experience.
I honestly think it would be a different emotional revelation, but equal. Like, to realize you did that and be like, I could imagine doing it in that order. You're almost like immediately, like retroactively feeling all these things that you didn't even realize. Like, I think that's just as powerful. Yeah.
I could, yeah, I was like that, and it makes so much more sense and everything. And then somebody later was like, "Hey, did you notice that Zelda is all over the place in the Sky Islands at the beginning? She's everywhere, and she's in the title screen." And I didn't realize that because I was busy crying, and because I just didn't.
The like the
Yeah, she's there.
is
If she
that
like when
her?
you, yeah, when you dive off of the thing
Sure.
and the music
Oh,
plays and the
I thought you
title
meant
card
in the
plays.
logo. I thought you meant the logo.
Oh, no, 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 no,
That
no. Like,
title
in
card
that
pop up.
scene,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah, when you're in
Gotcha.
that scene and you're flying or whatever, I didn't realize there was a dragon there, and I
Okay.
don't know how
I'm
the
gonna look
heck
at my
I didn't see
screenshot
her.
because I don't think
Yeah,
I knew that either.
she's there, and then this whole second time I've been playing, she's everywhere. She's flying above, like,
Yep.
she's all over the place. I don't know how I never saw her
Well,
because I
you
don't
probably
ever
just
remember
saw
seeing her.
movement, but you didn't think if you don't
Maybe I
know
was
it's
like,
her,
"Oh, look,
right?
it's Throsh. They're back
Right.
in this game." Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably what I thought,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize she's everywhere in the beginning. So she's very much a
That's
part of
so
it. But yeah,
cool.
I think that was one of the things that struck me as well was just how long has she just been flying around? Just does she know? Does she not know? I don't really
Yeah.
know. But but it is interesting that at the end when you do fight Ganon, she does come to help you. So she must remember something
I think yeah,
because none of the other dragons did.
it's got to be
So,
like like when you finally like get the sword from her. I feel like
oh,
that probably has
maybe.
some
Yeah.
relevance in terms of her
Either that or
remembering.
when you collect all the tears or something, maybe there's
Yeah.
some sort of bond or connection or something.
Yeah.
Because, you'd think that if the dragons all sensed impending doom, they would all come help you. But
Right.
they didn't. It was just Zelda. But the fact that we got to fight the final boss, which was already bananas as it was, like already
Yes.
crazy, with our girl was
So good.
so cool. It was
Yeah.
so good. It was so great. It was
And
amazing.
they did a
So,
version of that in Twilight Princess because you are kind of on
yeah.
horseback with her. So
Yeah,
like
that's
there's a
true.
precedent for it, but the
It
scale
wasn't
of it
nearly as
was
epic,
yeah,
though.
the
Yeah, it
scale
was
of it was
like,
way bigger.
I was like, "Come sit on the horse behind me. Come on, let's do this.
Yeah.
Come on, you gotta aim better, Zelda. You're getting straight feet in front of you." Yeah, yeah. But it was so much more. But like I said, I felt so much more emotionally invested because I was so angry at Ganon. I didn't feel that angry at Ganon in Twilight Princess because I
Sure.
was like, all right, yeah, he's the bad guy, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
the world's gonna end if he wins, whatever.
Yeah.
But in this one, I was like, what you did
Yeah.
and what you made her do, I will never forgive. Like, I was
Yeah.
so angry with him. And so it was so much more vindicating than it
Yeah.
was in Twilight Princess. Like, Twilight Princess, it was kind of like your quintessential, like, let's take him
It's
down.
just your
Okay. And
villain.
you did
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But this one, it was like, it was
Felt
personal
personal, yeah.
at this point. I was ready.
Agreed.
No, I was so mad. Ugh. I think at the end of that video too, like when I was talking through all my feelings of like the tears, I was like, I have never been more angry again. Like I will take him down. I am so ready to
Yeah.
take him down. I was so mad. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What a
So many emotions.
masterpiece. Yeah.
Yep. It was really well done.
Well, your love of Zelda is obvious, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to
love
have you
it.
on, because it is that and Final Fantasy are the two games that always come up when me and my brother are talking game memories.
I would say for me and my brother, it's probably Zelda and Metroid. We have
Sure.
a lot wrapped up in Metroid. Final
Okay.
Fantasy, not so much. I've only ever played Final Fantasy VII all the way
Sure.
through, and then Remake and Rebirth.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to change that, but that's not to say I don't like Final Fantasy.
No,
It's
no.
just never
It's like
happened.
Pokemon. You just missed it, right?
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
your brother's hand-me-down games, and if he didn't get it, then you
Yep,
didn't get it.
and yeah, my brother didn't have any other than Final Fantasy VII, so I played what my brother owned.
Yep.
But yeah, so Metroid is probably mine, but I do have a lot of love for Zelda, lots of love for Zelda because they just keep getting better.
Oh, I love
They
them.
just keep getting better. The story and now with like the graphics we have and with these like full orchestras. Oh, that
so good.
final dive, like
It was
I
so
can't even
wild.
listen to that without being like,
There was a part in we'll wrap up in a minute. This one part is one of those moments where I had to like pause and like absorb what just happened. There's a song from Wind Waker it's called Dragon Roost Island.
oh gosh, yes.
And then that
Dragon
comes,
Roost Isle is
yeah, because then
phenomenal.
that plays in the Rito,
Rito
Village. And then when you're fighting, what's it called? Caldera, the big boss.
Okay.
And You know
Can
that.
we just say that Colgera is easily the coolest boss in Tears of the
Yes.
Kingdom?
That was
That I will
so
gatekeep.
good.
I'm sorry, but that is the best
Yeah.
boss. And I did that first, and I feel like everything was just a little bit of a downgrade after that. But the music, that is the one stream that somehow the VOD like disappeared into the void, and I don't
Oh,
have that on my YouTube
no.
channel, and I'm so mad because I remember when that, that
That
Rito
theme comes in, yeah. Yeah.
with that chorus and stuff. I remember being
So
like,
good.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh! I was so excited because not only do we have this really awesome boss design with just the really cool, like you gotta like
The
dive through him and all
yeah.
that stuff, but now we have like I love it when composers do that, when they can take their Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth did this a lot, where they took
Yes.
like the original themes and then they like somehow like mixed them and twisted them into, or wove them, twisted sounds bad, wove them into these new themes.
Yep.
That is my favorite because it mixes old memories to create new core memories.
It literally made my hair stand up, and I had to like.
Yeah.
I felt like I was being blown back into my couch. It felt so cool. And that was one of those moments where it was one of those, because I was just shooting the things that you had to destroy on him. I was just like shoot, and I was like, he was like below me. I was like, can I just dive bomb through it?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Can I do this? Will this work? And then do it. Like, oh, that was so cool.
This was amazing. I know. I fought him every chance I got. If I was running around the depths and I saw him, I'd be like, BRB.
Yeah.
I'd run over there and fight him because it was such a cool boss fight. And was he like super hard? Not really. But his design was super cool, and his music was top tier. Yeah. And I felt the same way when I did the Genova fight in Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it starts off at that slow burn, and it was beautiful anyway.
There are so many compilations of people reacting to the exact moment you're about to mention, is when the real Genova theme kicks in.
And I remember I was sitting alone in my family room on a pillow because we were in a new house with a really wide, like deep family room, and so my couch was really far away from my TV, and we hadn't gotten a bigger TV yet, so I was sitting totally alone. Everybody was asleep, and I was like sitting there. I felt like a little kid. I was sitting there like looking up at the TV, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, there it is. I have nobody to talk to about this. I had nobody because I was totally by myself, and like texting my siblings who hadn't played it yet wasn't the same. It was.
And you almost wouldn't want to spoil that because you don't know you're fighting Genova.
You'll never believe.
Yeah,
it was amazing. And so Colgera gave me that same feeling 100%. Where I was just like, I can't believe. And I just have massive respect for composers because I don't think in music that way, and I respect people who can.
It's magic to me. I don't understand.
It's magic. Yep. So I was with you right there when that happened. That chorus comes in. I was like, this is the best game in the world. I was so excited. It was amazing. I thought the dungeons were.
They were better. I think they were better than Breath of the Wild Divine Beasts. I liked the dungeons better in Tears of the Kingdom because they weren't just inside of structure.
Yes, I was just going to say, I liked
varied,
the fact that you had to kind of get there, kind of, sort of. I mean, I actually really liked the Divine Beasts. I don't know if I would say that I liked them better or Tears of the Kingdom better. I'm not really sure, but the boss design definitely kind of went downhill for me in Tears of the Kingdom.
Colgera was definitely like peak,
top tier. And then when I made it to like the Water Temple, I was like,
it's fine. It's just a little shark running around.
Here's the Zelda boss. Okay. This is very like Majora's Mask, kind of like, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. And, and it's fine. But I have specifically stayed away from the Wind Temple this second playthrough because like, I don't want to
save that for the end.
I want to save that. But at the same time, you get the best power from it.
True.
And I'm like, do I want to? Dang it. I don't know, but it's true. I have so much love for it. It's a great franchise, and it's not everybody's favorite, and that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of people that think Zelda is lame or silly or, I don't know. I don't know how you can look at a game like Tears of the Kingdom and say that it's not a well-done game.
Just technically speaking, the game is like 18 gigs. How did that game fit on basically a cell phone? Like the Switch is basically a cell phone at
Yeah,
this
like I
point.
said, sound like a jet engine. Like it's
Yeah.
probably, as I'm sitting here, but I have headphones on, so I couldn't hear it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I consider myself really, really lucky that I am in a time. I know there are a lot of people that are like video games can be addictive, or they can be they're bad and I don't like them, and they're
That's what I grew up
I
with. That sentiment was that's what it
oh
was.
really?
Oh yeah.
Video games were bad?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
my
were a waste of
stepmom is
time and they
yeah.
scramble your brain and
Yep, they make
my
you violent and they
my parents like were luckily like not the ones saying that and therefore
Mm,
would get us the games that we wanted or whatever once in a while.
that's good.
But it was like you had to keep it almost hidden because people thought it was stupid and
Or of the devil or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll make you. Yeah, I luckily my mom was never into games, but my dad really liked playing games. My dad
Sure.
actually played like the original Halo for years.
Sure.
I'll never forget. He
He's a
called me one
real
day and
one.
he called me one day and he goes, I have to tell you something. You'll never believe what I did." And I was like, "Tell me what you did, Dad." And he said, "I beat the Truth and Reconciliation on Legendary by myself." And
Oh,
I was like, "Dad, you know
that's
what? That
that.
is actually pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
that's
Like,
no
I
small
couldn't do
feat.
that." No. I hate playing Halo on Legendary. I like to have fun
Yeah.
during games, and that is not fun to me. And it may be fun to some people, but it is not for me.
Yeah.
So my dad appreciates games and he likes them. He doesn't really play them much anymore, but he's always really liked games. But like my mom was never against them.
Yeah.
But I know plenty of people. My stepmom is one of those. It's like, oh, I think video games can cause addictions and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's fine. But ultimately, anything can become a problem if it takes over your life.
Yeah.
I mean, reading books can become an addiction where you're not feeding your kids because you're reading books. I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often, but you know what I mean? Like you could
Yep.
say that about anything.
100%.
So I think for me, like, I don't know, I have a hard time with those sentiments because I just they're stories. They're
And
interactive stories.
yeah, and they're like I've given this example probably on this podcast with my brother, but it's like it helped my vocabulary when I was a kid. Like especially playing Final Fantasy games because those are very text heavy.
Heavily, yeah.
I was like
Yep.
a much better reader, and I just had. It's like I was like 7 years old, and I knew what haste meant because it makes you go faster.
Yeah. See?
Like it's stuff like that. So
Yeah, it helps you. It can help you with that. I remember interviewing somebody else on GameSpark who mentioned something like that, saying that video games helped them learn how to. I can't remember exactly what they said, but it was something along
Yeah.
those lines. Helped my reading comprehension, or I have, or I think they said something like I have a hard time with reading comprehension, and so I appreciated being able to play games that helped me learn the story in a different way, or
Sure.
helped me with my reading comprehension or whatever. And so I think. I don't know. I think it's very easy to get carried away with video games for sure. And whenever my 9-year-old is like, because my 9-year-old has a Switch and she loves games and we can play together. And I think that's great. And I
Yeah.
love that. And I'm hoping my little one that's 3, I'm hoping she grows up as a gamer as well. Because my
Sure.
husband doesn't care for them. But my 9-year-old and I play together and we talk a lot about Zelda and stuff. She loves Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom,
Awesome.
because she takes my finished file and then goes and like
Oh,
beats
just
Daddy camps and,
literally
like,
the sandbox.
yeah, she can do whatever she wants. It's
Yeah.
great. It's totally great. So she can do that. And sometimes she'll be like, "Well, I just want to play more games." And I'm like, "Look, babe, so do I. Like, I would love to be playing right now, but we cannot play for 6 hours a day. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That sounds like heaven, but we can't."
Yeah.
So, like, I get it. I love them, but I just stand by what I've said multiple times now. I think I've repeated myself like 6 times. They're just stories.
Yeah.
But in reality, they're almost more. We're investing more in them because we are the protagonists.
Yeah,
We are the
100%.
ones. It's very seldom that you play like the villain. I know there are games out there where you do that, but I would probably not really like to be the villain. I think I
Sure.
like being the protagonist. You can live 100, thousands of stories through video games, and you never have to leave your couch.
Yeah.
I think that's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, your love of Zelda is obvious to all of us, and I really appreciate you taking time to come and gush about Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh my God.
I told my brother when he finished Breath of the Wild, I was like, I don't think you should go immediately into Tears of the Kingdom because you might burn out a little bit because
I
it
would
is
agree.
similar enough that it might
Yes.
be. So I was like, because he played Breath of the Wild right before Rebirth, so it was like,
Oh, so this is recent.
yeah, this was like this year that
Oh, I
he.
thought you were saying like a couple years
No,
ago.
no,
Oh,
no.
no.
This
Yeah,
was
no.
this Christmas.
Yeah, no. He needs to like take a break.
Yeah. So I was like,
'Cause
maybe like the end of the year, that can be like your bookend your year with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah,
Um,
because Tears of the Kingdom is great, but you do not want to go into that game and get burned out and quit
no,
halfway. You need
exactly.
to go in and do it
Yeah.
because it's totally worth it, but it's a haul. Like
And
it's
if
a,
he just
it's
spent 150 hours on Breath of the Wild, he'll burn out by the time he
yep,
finishes.
yeah, I agree.
Um,
I think that's wise. I think that's
so
wise.
that being said, I haven't been able to really fully gush about this game with someone because none of my other friends have played it. So,
Yes.
so this was very cathartic for me as well. So I really appreciate you
I'm
taking some
so
time.
glad. Oh my gosh, I can talk Zelda for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm just passionate about, well, and that's one thing I really love about Twitch is the fact my husband and I were just talking about this the other day because he was like, I don't really understand. He fully supports my streaming. He's great about it. He
Yep.
fully supports it. He doesn't love video games, but he's like, I totally am here for you, and I love that you have that and you have a community, and I think that's great. He said, I don't really understand the pull of Twitch and watching people play video games and stuff. And I was like, I really think what it really all boils down to is the fact that people want to share their passions.
Yeah.
And when you are limited, like I live in a neighborhood. How many people in my neighborhood are passionate about video games? I don't know. Like I live in Texas. It's 1,000,000 degrees outside. We're living on the surface of the sun. I don't ever leave my house. How am I supposed to meet the people? Like, unless I go knock on someone's door and I'm like, here's some cookies. Do you like Zelda? Like, how are you supposed to meet people? And Twitch gives you a place to come together and you can look up a game that you love
Yeah.
and then you can find a streamer that you really kind of, vibe with
Yeah.
and then hopefully you find a community that you feel like you're part of. And if you can find those things, I think that's great. It's not about the game really, although you can kind of gush about it and we can talk about it
Yeah.
over chatting or whatever, but it's really more about sharing your love of something that you loved and you experienced and being around other people who feel the same way.
Yep.
It's just like you said earlier, like it's like a virtual, it's like sitting on
Just
the
hanging out on
on
the couch.
somebody's couch and talking about games or whatever. And what happens when you experience something you love, whether it's watching a great movie or you go to a great restaurant or you read a great book, you tell people about it.
Yeah.
But video games are slightly different because not everybody's into video games. Most people read, most people listen to podcasts, most people watch movies, but gaming is just slightly different. And so Twitch slash YouTube slash whatever it is you stream on or whatever
Yep.
it is, whatever content you make, that's a little bit different. You have to work a little harder to find that community. But I think it's so important because, you yourself have gushed about the game, and I
Yeah.
love that.
I
I
love
think that's great.
it.
So I totally get it. And I also told my husband, I was like, I think a lot of times Twitch is put on kind of as a background thing. I don't think people are sitting there with popcorn, like just sitting watching. And maybe they are. I don't know. That's cool too.
I would say more often than not, though, you're right. That's
I
where
think
that term parallel play. That's why
yeah,
it resonates
they're
so much. Like, yeah,
either
that's how I use Twitch.
Yep. They're either playing a game themselves, but they want something on the side and they want to be kind of with people,
Yeah.
or they're working
Yep.
or something like that. So I was like, I think you should give Twitch just a little bit of grace because and he was like, you know what? You're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think you're right.
Yep.
And I said, I know that you think it's kind of silly. And my husband goes, listen, my husband's a hardcore bass fisherman. And he goes, bass
Sure.
fishing is stupid. Okay. And, like, what the heck? We're all out here like getting super excited about pulling fish into a boat.
Yeah.
But I love it. And
Yep.
that's what video games are like for you. And that's totally fine. And I love that for you. I'm glad you have that, and I love reading too, but I don't watch movies very often because honestly, when I sit and watch a movie, I think I could be playing a game right now where I'm
Yeah.
actually
Same.
invested and I'm actually doing something and feeling
Yeah.
like I'm accomplishing something. I can never just sit and watch a movie. I have to be doing something else
Yeah.
while I'm watching it. But if I'm playing a game, I feel like I'm invested and I'm still experiencing a story.
For sure.
And Tears of the Kingdom was top tier
Ugh.
story. It was
I can't believe it's already over a year since that came out. That's wild.
And I highly doubt that this next installment will make us cry. But you know what?
It might
You
get
never
me.
know.
It
You
could.
never know
I've
because
cried at 2D games before. It doesn't
I
have to be a
have
3D
I
game
have
to
as
hit me.
well. Oh gosh, I've cried in 2D games as well. But I think it'll be interesting to see what they do music wise because I did notice that I don't think they played the Zelda theme song, like the Link's theme
I
in
think
the
I heard
trailer,
a
did they?
version of it like almost like hidden in maybe it
Okay.
was it Zelda or may have been there was something familiar to it, but it was like one of those composer things where they're just kind of
Yeah.
sneaking it in. So
Because Zelda's theme doesn't get me, but like the classic dun da 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 da
I
da
think you'll
that gets me
hear I
almost
think you'll
every
hear
time.
some Link to the Past
Okay.
references in the music because it does
Okay.
look like that world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we'll hear if there's some Link to the Past songs that you like remember. I
Man,
feel like that's what's gonna sneak in there.
there is just so much weight behind every one of those notes.
I know.
Because it's just there. I mean, and people have asked me like, well, why did you, or when I've tried to explain why I cried at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, I was just like, I kind of don't know. It was just a lot of like, I've been waiting for so long, and I love the franchise, and I loved Breath of the Wild, and maybe I didn't have that kind of cathartic emotional response in Breath of the Wild. I was too stunned by
Sure.
what it was. And
Sure.
so maybe it was like partly my Breath of the Wild catharsis kind of coming through in Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe I was like, oh my gosh, here it is again. Like, we're
And I
doing this
don't and
again.
I don't feel like Breath of the Wild went super hard on the music as much as at least in
Oh
that moment in Tears of the Kingdom, right? So maybe you're like,
no.
oh, this is gonna be a jolly breeze, like jump down, and then it hits you with that
Yeah.
music, and you're like, oh, here it comes. Yeah.
It was crazy. I would take whoever composed that in the new, like my
Okay.
free for all Zelda game.
I think it was Koji Kondo still.
I think it was.
I think so, but probably like collaborating with other people, but
Yeah, they
sure.
usually kind of like delegate, they're getting older and like, I
Yeah.
mean, if I had that much power, I would too. I'd be like, yeah, okay, well, you can do that. And then you can do that.
Sure.
But yeah, the music and all that stuff. So it just kind of, I don't know. It was a lot of emotions at the beginning there, but
Yeah.
I think I just had a feeling again, like with Breath of the Wild, some games you reach a point where you're just kind of like, this is going to change my
Yep.
life. I
100%.
know this is going to stay with me. I
Yep.
experienced the same thing with Hollow Knight. When I came to, have you
Sure.
ever played Hollow Knight?
Not all the way through, but like
Okay.
enough to know why it's so good.
Yeah, the green path area where everything's
Yep.
all green and the music's really kind of ethereal
That's
and
like my
almost,
favorite song from that
yeah,
game.
that's
Yeah.
my favorite song too. And I remember coming into it and just immediately being like, okay, I think I'm gonna remember this for
Sure.
a long time.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt with Tears of the Kingdom too. I was like, I think I'm on the verge of something really amazing.
Yeah.
Because they've now had 6 years between, so I don't know. I just it's
a great
really
feeling.
close to my heart. It's really close to my heart.
Yeah.
Clearly. I can't even stop talking about it. I'll stop.
I love this. This was like I said, I haven't been able to really talk about the game for over a year because none of my friends have really played it. So uh,
you need new friends. You need to get friends.
So funny
need to
story.
get
Funny story to wrap up. The genesis of this podcast with my brother and I is that a lot of people that I work with are much younger than I am. And so I want to talk about these rich emotional stories in these games. And they're like, yeah, I was playing Fortnite last night. And I was like, oh, God. So I was like, I just need somebody to talk about games.
Child.
Yeah.
Dude, I feel really young until I get around young people. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, ugh, I am not young. I mean, I'm not that old, but
it literally was born from that. And just like, I just want to talk about games because we would do it when he comes home for the holidays once a year or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, I just want to do it more than just that. So
yeah.
that's literally why this podcast started, is so that we have a chance to talk about these games.
We decided right before I went out of town a couple weeks ago, I had so many thoughts about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Lots of good ones.
Yeah.
some bad ones.
Sure.
Whatever. They weren't going to make everybody happy. I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
that going into it. And so I decided to do a roundtable discussion in my Discord.
Yeah, I saw
And
you
I
posting about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I threw that out there to pretty much everybody and was like, if you want to come and chat about it. And you know what? It was the same thing. It was the same thing where we all talked about the likes and the dislikes and everything. And it was great. And once again, Twitch offers an opportunity to find these people that are passionate about the same things you are.
Yep.
And that even down to like a game genre, like like Metroidvanias or
Yeah.
like RPGs or whatever. And I just think that's super cool because anytime you have a passion, regardless of what the passion is, you want, I mean, I remember there's a quote, I think it's when you set yourself on fire, people love to watch you burn.
Sure.
So when you put yourself when you're passionate about something, people are drawn to that, and
Sure.
especially people with the same passion. And then when you all get together with the same passion, it can just be magic. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. So
Well,
that's one
my
of the
brother
reasons
and
I
I
love it.
had a 7-hour discussion about Rebirth when he finished it. So,
I
yeah,
bet you did because there's a lot to talk about.
we're like the biggest, we are major fanboys, so we didn't have much to complain about. But I fully
Oh,
can look at it. I know people have problems with it, but it's just like my favorite. 7 is like my favorite game of all time,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
I'm easy to please. And my brother and I we just gushed about the game for like 7 hours. It was
Listen,
a lot of
I would
fun.
not have put 100+ hours into that game if I didn't love it.
Yeah,
So ultimately, I loved it.
yeah,
There
for
were some
sure.
things about it that I was like, I didn't really like this, but it didn't like, I
Didn't ruin
anyway,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is
We won't get into
this
that.
is another episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I if you can find the people that will, build you up and love your passions with you,
Yeah,
even if they don't totally love them, but they love that you love them,
yeah,
then those are your people.
yeah. And that is actually one of the why I kind of started doing the side quest episodes is because a lot of content creators I interviewed were like musicians. I don't know shit about music, but I want to hear about how you come up, how you
Yeah,
make a
tell me
cover for
how
a
you
song.
do that.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
talking to people about stuff they love.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, when I
Because
saw
it just
you,
makes them light up. It's
yep.
great.
So when I
Great.
saw you get as emotional at Tears of Kingdom as you were, I was like, I gotta have her on the podcast at some point.
Oh my gosh. And I'm curious now that I'm playing it the second time, I'm curious if it will make me emotional again. Because I've gone back and watched those videos just periodically. Sometimes I'll go back and just kind of click around on them,
Sure.
just kind of relive moments and stuff. And I
Yep.
can feel it. I can feel it coming on. I don't ever let it actually, but I'm like, if I were by myself or if I were streaming or whatever, and I were just totally open to just being emotional,
Yeah.
I think I probably would because
Yeah.
it's just so sad. Oh, so sad. It's sad, but it's beautiful and
Yeah, in a
it's,
good way. Like it's
yeah,
tragic, we'll say.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's tragic, but it's
Yeah.
also heroic because like she's every bit the hero that Link
You
is.
have to stop because I'm gonna want to play it and I don't have time.
I don't have time. I know. I shouldn't have even
have
started it, but now I'm like
I
every
have the
night.
FF14 expansion coming out in a week. I do not have time to replay Tears of the
A
Kingdom.
week is totally enough time. Are you kidding? Come
Oh
on, you can
God.
do it. It's fine. Go ahead and just go in. Just don't do
Just
any
beeline it.
shrines. You'll go in there with 6 hearts. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like maybe
Okay,
do a
yeah.
couple. You'll
Yeah.
be fine. Totally fine. You're a veteran. You'll be totally
Sure.
fine.
All right, Susie. We mentioned you stream on Twitch and stuff. I'll put your links in the description, but why don't you just let everyone know where we can find you?
I never really know how it is. I think it's twitch.tv/Susiegrace.
That's the Twitch part is correct.
That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah. So yeah. So that's that. I stream on Twitch. I am a stay-at-home mom, so I don't stream. I can't stream for super long, but I stream 4 days out of the week. And then I do have a YouTube channel. It's also Susie Grace, Susie.Grace, I think. I don't even know. I think it's Susie.Grace.
Sure.
But I don't upload tons of content there, but all my VODs are there.
Yep.
So any past
And your
playthroughs,
GameSpark episodes
and
are
my
there.
GameSpark episodes are there
Yep.
as well. But any past like VODs, I try to put in a playlist.
Yep.
But yes, my GameSpark episodes are there, and I don't know exactly what number I'm on, but I'm always down for talking to people about
For
games
sure.
because mine is more going back on, well, you asked about my Zelda history.
Yeah.
Mine isn't based on one game. It's more just like, what's your gaming history?
Yeah.
What's your earliest gaming history, or like memory? What's the first game you ever beat and like played and beat all by yourself? What are your
Yeah.
top 5 video games, whatever. So I also love talking to people and hearing about their stories because everybody's is different.
Yeah, they're a fun watch.
So,
I
yeah.
wasn't kidding when I said when I found that I went through like all of them you had at the time. Really
They're
enjoyed
fun.
them. So I'll
They're
put a
really
link to
fun.
all that stuff below in the description so everyone that's watching can find it.
Cool.
But yeah, Susie, I just want to say again, thanks so much. This has been very cathartic for me to be able to talk about
I'm
Tears of
so
Kingdom.
glad. It was absolutely my pleasure.
Great.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll leave you guys all the links to Susie's socials and everything so you can show her some love on those platforms too. Right on. Thanks, everyone.